This is the Rich Report, bringing you the richest content across sports. And today is the NCAA Conference Tournament Preview. We're going to look at the state of college basketball in 2019. It has not been a great year for college basketball in terms of great teams. Usually the power conferences like the ACC, the Big 12, the Pac-12, they're usually top heavy. You usually get 6 or 7 great teams out of each conference, and that's really not the case this year. A lot of mid-major conferences have teams that are better than or are deeper than some of these bigger conferences, like the Southern and the Mid-American Conference. Those conferences are better than the Pac-12 right now. We're also going to look at the number of teams I think are already locked into the tournament. And then we'll close with some conference tournament predictions and how it will affect Selection Sunday on March 17th. So let's get right into it. College basketball. It's been such a weird, odd, crazy year this year. You know, usually when you look at the conferences like the ACC and the Big Ten, you know, you would expect to see 8 to 9 teams that should be already locked into the tournament. That's not the case at all this year. I mean, look at the ACC. Only 5 teams are ranked, which is a lot for, other conferences wish they could have that. But when you look at it, other than being just top heavy with Virginia, Carolina, and Duke, there's really no other teams that they're not really locked in. They have to fight their way in the conference tournament to get locked in as an at-large. Syracuse is 19-10. Their conference record will probably get them in. They're 10-6, so they're probably in. Louisville 19-11. Clemson 17-12. Notre Dame was terrible this year. Miami, terrible. Boston College, disappointing. The only teams I can really say are locked in are Virginia, Carolina, Duke, Florida State, and Virginia Tech. Syracuse are probably already locked in because of their win at Duke. Louisville is a question mark. I don't know about NC State, even though they're 20-9 overall. They're 1-8 against teams that are ranked. 8-8 in conference, that's not locked in at all. Let's look at the Big 12. Really a terrible year for the Big 12 in terms of their standards for basketball. Kansas has been awful this year. Kansas State looks better. They're definitely coming off of that momentum of last year's success in the tournament, getting all the way to the Elite Eight. Texas Tech is going to win the regular season for the Big 12. They'll be the 1 seed going into the Big 12 tournament. But other than that, who's really locked in the Big 12? There's 3 teams that are guaranteed in. Baylor's 19-10. Conference record of 10-6. That looks better than a lot of other teams, but 19-10 is not a good record to have at this point of the year. Iowa State is 20-9, 9-7 in conference does not bode well for them. Texas is 16-13, 8-8 in conference. They're on the bubble, but they're on the wrong side of the bubble. TCU 6-10 in conference. Oklahoma 6-10 in conference. If you have a losing record in conference, even though your record may be 18-11, you're out. Oklahoma's 1-5 against AP. TCU is 2-5. That's not good. You shouldn't be guaranteed a spot in the tournament just based off of merit. That's why Oklahoma shouldn't have been in last year. They wanted Oklahoma in because of Trae Young. That was the only reason they got in over Oklahoma State, who was miles better than them, and their resume was miles better than them. The Big East, awful as well. Villanova, not great at all. Marquette has really been the team, but they've lost to Villanova already. Marcus Howard is the best player in the nation, but he's going to really need to show out this time. This is where he proves that he is the best player in the nation. But when you look at the rest of the conference, St. John's got off to a hot start, and they fell apart once again in the Big East, 8-9 in conference, but they're 20-10 overall. Xavier, 16-13, they're 4th in conference. Georgetown, they're 500 in conference, but 18-11 overall. They might be in just because it's the Big East, and the Big East is supposed to be the basketball conference. Seton Hall, for some reason, a lot of people's bracketologies, they're in, but they're 16-12 and 7-9 in conference. You should be out. The only way that Seton Hall should get in is if they win the conference championship or beat both Villanova and Marquette at some point in the conference tournament. It's just crazy. The at-larges and the teams on the bubble, their records are just awful. Big Ten, I think, is probably the deepest conference, but even that's a giant question mark. Purdue is the has the best conference record at 15-3. Michigan will turn it on. I believe John Beilein always gets those guys ready for this time of the year. Michigan State has dealt with injuries. Who knows what they'll do? Wisconsin's been a roller coaster ride all year. Maryland's right there. Iowa's probably in at 21-8 with the winning record in conference. Ohio State, wrong side of the bubble at 8-10 in conference. Minnesota, wrong side of the bubble. Everybody else is out. Not Indiana's not getting in. Nebraska's not getting in. Rutgers is not getting in. I see 5-6 teams getting out of the Big Ten. So if we go back and we break this down by conference, teams that are locked in the America East, when you look at every other team, Vermont should be a lock. 23-6, 13-2 overall, but that's not going to be reality. They're going to have to win the conference to get into March Madness. Now, if we look at the AAC, 3 teams are locked in for sure, that being Houston, Cincinnati, and UCF. Temple, bubble team, but their resume is looking good at 11-5 in conference and 21-8 overall. I can see 4 teams from the AAC getting into March Madness. In the Atlantic 10, another a conference that usually is great at basketball, a down year. VCU, really the only team I believe is a lock, a guaranteed lock. Davidson at 21-8, 12-4 looks good if you're in any other conference, in a major conference, but the A10 is not a major conference. They're a bubble team, and most likely they're going to have to win their conference tournament to get into March Madness. Same thing with Dayton at 11-5 and 19-10 overall. So I see one team that right now is locked in, and that's VCU. Everybody else has to win the conference. The ACC, I've got 5 teams currently locked in for sure, and that's Virginia, Carolina, Duke, Florida State, and Virginia Tech. Syracuse has to fight their way. Same thing with Louisville. Same thing with NC State. Those are teams that are going to have to play well for this last week of the regular season and then going to next week for the conference tournaments. In the Big 12, I've got 3 locked in for sure. Texas Tech, Kansas State, Kansas. Baylor, Iowa State, Texas, they've got to fight their way. They're probably going to have to win their conference too, but somehow the committee will make the wrong decision like they always do and put them guaranteed in already without having to do any work in the conference tournament. Big East, I have 2, and that's the 2 ranked teams in Villanova and Marquette. Georgetown, Xavier, St. John's, Seton Hall, Creighton, they all need to show out in the conference tournament. They're going to need, I would say all 4 would need to win the conference tournament or have to have a route that has them beating Villanova and Marquette on their way to the conference tournament championship. Big Ten is where we have the most teams that I think are going to be in March Madness. I have 6 of them. That is Purdue, Michigan, Michigan State, Wisconsin, Maryland, and Iowa. Iowa, I think 21-8, 10-8 in conference for this year is enough to get in. Ohio State, Minnesota, nothing guaranteed. They should not be in unless they have a fantastic conference tournament. And Conference USA, like I said, records matter. Your conference record matters. Old Dominion should be a lock at 13-3 in conference, 23-6 overall, just dominant over the conference. Nobody else in the conference is really hanging with them. They should be in regardless. I mean, they probably have to win 2 or 3 games in the conference tournament to get to March Madness, but they should be a lock right now because of how bad everybody else is. In the MAC conference, Buffalo is a lock. You know who else should be a lock? Toledo, 11-5 in conference, 23-6 overall. You can't leave a team out that has a record of 23-6. Yeah, they didn't beat anybody in the AP poll, but you do enough in the regular season in your conference to warrant a 23-6 record. You should be in. In the Mountain West, I've got 2 also. Utah State, 24-6, 14-3 in conference. They only win over Nevada. In Nevada, 26-3. They're in as well. Fresno State, bubble team. San Diego State's going to have to do some work. Pac-12 has been awful. Washington is probably the favorite to win the conference, but they're not locked if they lose in the first round. So whoever wins the Pac-12 is probably going to be the only team to get in if Washington can't win the conference. The SEC, I've got 4. Tennessee, LSU, Kentucky, Mississippi State. Auburn, I think, still has work. Ole Miss and Florida still have work to do. The Southern, Wofford is in. Shockingly, 22 ranked in the country, 26-4, undefeated in conference. UNC Greensboro, 26-5, 15-3 in conference. They might as well be in as well with how bad everybody else is. And then the West Coast, obviously Gonzaga is going to be in, and New Mexico State should be a lock, even though they're not ranked. They're 26-4, 14-1 in conference. Some predictions for all of these conferences in the America East. We're going to go with Vermont. AAC, I'm going to go with UCF. They're hot right now. I think they're better than Houston and Cincinnati at this moment. They're going to win the conference. A10, I'm going VCU. ACC, I think North Carolina will get it done. I think they're the most complete team in the entire conference. I think they're more experienced than Duke. They've already beat Duke, and I think they will score more than Virginia. So North Carolina will win the ACC. Atlantic 10, I'm going to go Liberty. Big 12, Kansas State. Big East, Marquette. Big Sky, Montana. Big South, I'm going to go with Radford. Big 10, Michigan. Big West, UC Irvine. Colonial Athletic Association, I'm going with Hofstra. They're dominating their entire conference. Conference USA, Old Dominion, Horizon. Northern Kentucky, Ivy League, Yale. MAAC, I'm going to go with Iona. That's a terrible conference. Mid-American, Buffalo. MEAC, I'm going to go with Norfolk State. Missouri Valley, I'm going to go with Loyola Chicago. They've got the conference experience. We were a Final Four team last year. I think they'll get back in this year. Mountain West, I'm going to go with Nevada. Northeast, Fairleigh Dickinson. Ohio Valley, I'm going to go with Belmont, even though they're in a great race with Murray State. Pac-12, I think Washington will get the job done. Patriot League, I'm going to go with Colgate. SEC, I'm going to go with Kentucky. Southern Wofford. Southland Sam Houston State. SWAC, I'm going to go with Prairie View. Summit League, South Dakota State's running that conference. Sunbelt, Georgia State. West Coast Conference, obviously Gonzaga, since St. Mary's is nowhere to be found. And in the WAC, I'm going to go with New Mexico State.